Hi everyone, my name is Tak Nagumo, Executive Director of the Smart City Institute Japan. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Actually, we've been running the webinar for a year or so forth, and today is the 214th round of the webinar. And then we were running a webinar for Japanese audiences in Japanese only, but this time, today is a brand new round of the webinar, new series called Global Perspective on Smart Cities. And we are running this webinar only in English, no Japanese translation. So yeah, if you mistakenly joined this webinar expecting the Japanese languages utilized, no, this is English only. My apology to you. And recorded version with the Japanese subtitle will be posted on YouTube later. So if you were to look at the this webinar in Japanese subtitle, please expect the YouTube channel later on. And today's topic is the Nordic model of smart cities, initiative and practices. Many Japanese people actually look into Nordic smart cities as a kind of ideal model. And then we are now having a special guest from Sweden to directly talk about smart cities in Nordic countries. So let me introduce our guest speaker today, Mr. Peter Popovics, founder and the CEO of NordicBiz. So Peter, come in. All
Good
right.
evening. Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm very much honored to have you today. And again, so Peter, this is a very first round of English version, our webinar. So you're the honorable first speaker of our new series. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tak, for the kind introduction. And it's a great pleasure to be here, especially that this is the first international webinar. So today, I would like to share my screen now. And today, I was thinking to give you a brief overview of the smart city landscape in the Nordics by giving you a couple of examples of initiatives, regional, national, and local initiatives. And then I thought I will also give you a brief overview of what it feels like living in the world's smartest city, which is currently Stockholm. And last, I would like to say a few words about what we do at NordicBiz in the context of smart cities. So even though the presentation I will present in English, but I thought that I will make the Japanese audience life a little bit easier by making the slides in Japanese language. So hope you can follow the presentation. And of course, at the end, I will be very happy to answer all your questions. So if the presentation allows me to move forward, yes. So as I mentioned, I would like to give an overview of smart city initiatives from the Nordics, and also what we do in a smart city context. And finally, I would like to also introduce you a brand new initiative which we are just launching at the moment, which will create a global network, hopefully a global network of virtual and physical smart city spaces. But I will talk about that towards the end of my presentation. So please allow me to start by saying a few words about myself. My name is Peter Popovics, and I came to Japan in 2001 as a Monbusho exchange student. And after the first year of language education, I entered Osaka University, where I studied economics. And towards the end of my bachelor's studies, I also had the opportunity to do an internship at the UN organization located in Nagoya, UNCRD, which really opened my eyes about environmental issues on a global scale. And this was also the time when global warming became a very important and vibrant topic. This is also the time when Al Gore published his book, Inconvenient Truth, which actually made a huge impact on me personally. And this also made me to change my majors from economics to environmental studies, environmental engineering, and hence I moved on to do a master's in environmental engineering also at Osaka University. So after graduation, I joined a German technical service provider, where under the accreditation of UNFCCC, the climate change arm of the United Nations, we were in charge of validating CDM, Clean Development Mechanism projects under the Kyoto Protocol, and we were also verifying the project's greenhouse gas emission reductions. Later on, I went on to become Global Business Field Manager for the sustainability services within the company, which at that time included carbon-related services and energy efficiency services. And then later on, I moved into operations management as a director of industrial services, where I was in charge of approximately 50 engineers and technical experts. Later, after 7 years, I felt I need a little bit of change, and I wanted to do something more innovative, or dealing with more innovative technologies. And I joined a US-Hungarian biotech company as sales and marketing director. And in 2017, I'm a person who likes to study, and I decided to go back to academia because I wanted to learn more about innovation management practices. And currently I'm enrolled at the Stockholm School of Economics, where I'm doing my PhD in innovation management. I'm affiliated at both the innovation department and also the European Institute of Japanese Studies. So therefore I can combine my interest in innovation and also my Japanese background. Only last year, I founded a consultancy called NordicBiz, where we essentially connect the Japanese and the European innovation ecosystems. I will say a few words about that later. And also I became one of the mentors of Smart City X, which is an international open innovation platform where Japanese and foreign startups work together with Japanese large corporates on smart city related technologies. So let's look into the Nordics first of all. The Nordics consist of 5 countries, as probably most of you know. It is Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland. The 5 countries have a combined population of approximately 27 million people. And if you look at their combined GDP, if they were one country, it would make them approximately the 10th largest economy in the world. But in terms of GDP per capita, all 5 countries are within the top 15. And just as a reference, Japan is 25th in terms of GDP per capita. I think it's also quite well known that the Nordic countries are ranking quite high on multiple indexes. For example, this region is the happiest region in the world. They also rank high in terms of gender equality. As an example of that, 4 countries out of 5, except for Sweden, have female prime ministers, for example. And they also are pretty high on digital governance rankings. They have low corruption. And of course, welfare societies are not free. They come at a price, literally at a price, meaning that, the taxes, both the consumption tax and also the income taxes are relatively high. Equally important, I would say, especially from a smart city perspective, is the innovation performance of the Nordic countries. And here what we see is that Sweden, Denmark, and Finland are the top 3 innovators within the European Union. And also the region has the highest density of scale-up companies in Europe. If we look at the global perspective, there is an interesting KPI, which is the number of unicorn companies per capita, and the Nordic is ranking 2nd only after the Silicon Valley. So the smart city agenda, I would say, is definitely ranking very high on the Nordic agenda, but in order to understand and to locate it properly, we need to understand how it fits into the overall sustainability agenda of the Nordics. And it all starts with a vision, which is that the Nordic wants to become the most sustainable and integrated region in the world by 2030. Now, some might actually argue that the region is already the most sustainable and integrated region in the world, but nevertheless, when we look at the definition of sustainable cities by the 5 Nordic countries, there are nine common characteristics that sustainable cities have to share. One of this is inclusiveness. So a city should create space for people where people with different ethnic background can live together peacefully and in a sustainable way. And what you see on the picture is actually a picture from Helsinki, where the city is trying and applying a mixed tenure policy in the urban areas in order to exclude segregation of certain ethnicities. Another criteria is that the cities have to be healthy cities, or at least promote a healthy lifestyle. And I brought this picture from Umeå, which is a city in the northern part of Sweden. And you see here a bus stop equipped with an artificial light. This is a kind of light therapy device, which helps to reduce SAD, seasonal affective disorder, among people. This is something, which is affecting people living in Northern Europe, where you have long, dark winters. So, on the one hand, this is definitely promoting a healthy way of living, but at the same time, this is also promoting the use of public transportation. Another criteria is obviously cities need to be resilient, and more need to become resilient, meaning that they should manage the impact of climate change. And in typical Nordic cities, this could be heavy rainfalls or flooding, for example. As another criteria, cities need to be compact green, as the definition says, meaning that they should provide multiple and accessible and close green areas. What you also see in the picture is, I think, from Norway, a modern development which was converted from a hospital area, and it provides small green areas with some water features in these parks. Now, of course, a very important criteria: cities have to be mobile, meaning that they need to provide access to safe and green transportation. And the picture shows, I think this is in Oslo, dedicated bicycle lanes elevated above the ground in order to avoid interruption by traffic lights, pedestrian cross, and so forth. Also, an important criteria: the cities should be low carbon, policies trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from energy use and also from transportation. And I think a great example for this would be Norway, where already during last year, 70% of the new cars on sale were electric. I think that's a pretty amazing achievement. And also Norway is planning to phase out the sale of combustion engine cars by the year 2025. Very ambitious target, but I think they will definitely reach it. Circularity is another important criteria, which essentially means that products and services need to be created in a way that when they reach the end of life, thoughts were given how these materials, services could actually be recycled and provide additional value once they reach their end of life. Design is also a very important criteria. They need to be multifunctional, practical, and ideally they should have some sort of aesthetic value at the same time. And last but not least, they should be smart, meaning that through innovative technologies, citizens should have new and innovative ways how they collaborate and they exist within their environment, and how they collaborate with other people. Now, moving on to initiatives, I'm starting with a regional one, and this is by far the biggest one. It's called Nordic Smart City Network, which consists of 20 smart cities from the 5 countries, including the 5 capitals. And this encompasses approximately 5.5 million people. Now, the most important function of this is obviously to co-create innovative and smart technologies, collect best practices, and disseminate them also to cities which are thinking of becoming smart cities, domestically and also abroad. Now, there were a couple of flagship projects, 5 precisely, which by now have all finished, but there are new initiatives starting, focusing on health as the main theme. So the past 5 projects included navigation wayfinding as an important project, meaning how citizens could enjoy the cities in a more and innovative way, also how to find their ways within cities. The second one was about people and flow, especially when cities add a new means of transportation or a new kind of line, a metro line or bus line, how it affects the flow of people within cities and how the flows can be managed. Related to that, there was a project about mobility hubs, how to create multimodal transportation, also how to solve the first and last mile issue, which is, I mean, once you are on a train, typically there is no problem with transportation, but how do you get to the train? And once you arrive to your destination at the train stop, how do you go to your final destination, whether it's your work or home? There was another project called Open Lab. This was actually done in Stockholm, which was essentially about how to include and involve people and citizens more into the creation of smart cities. What kind of cities do they want to live in? What kind of functions they want to have within those cities? And then the last project was about how to make the waste collection system within cities more smart. And later on, I will give you an example of that. Moving on to national initiatives, the first one I would like to introduce is called Smart Cities Sweden. And this is an initiative running in Sweden, led by 8 government agencies. It has 6 regional offices, and obviously multiple municipalities and companies are working with this initiative. They are tackling typical issues like climate change, energy, environment, mobility, digitalization of services mostly, city planning and social sustainability. But equally important, this initiative is actively seeking international collaboration. And as such, it also acts as a kind of export platform for all the best practices and the technologies which are featured and have already been successfully used throughout smart cities across Sweden. The next initiative is called Norwegian Smart Cities. And the reason I wanted to introduce this is because they recently issued a nationwide roadmap for smart cities. And what I really appreciated was that they not only just list up principles and vision what smart cities should look like and based on which smart cities should be established, but they also provide the necessary steps that needs to be done in order to create smart and sustainable cities, starting with creating common understanding among the stakeholders by doing proper research, analysis, prioritizing and setting the goals. Then the next step of creation and co-creation by sharing knowledge, by organizing collaborations and conducting meetings. And equally important, I would say, also conducting experiments. Same as startups, most of the initiatives, especially that are involving technologies, these are uncharted territories. So there is experimentation that needs to be done. And finally, there is learning, lessons learned by looking at the results and analyzing what happened, what went wrong, what could be improved. And this is the process through which smart and sustainable cities and communities can finally be achieved. Moving on to the next initiative. This is already a local initiative, a city level initiative. The first one is from Copenhagen. It's called Smart City Copenhagen. And I think Copenhagen has been quite famous for having a goal of becoming carbon neutral by the year 2025. And also they have a plan to be 100% free of fossil fuel by the year 2050. I think this is definitely ambitious, but if there is anyone, I think Copenhagen or any city, then Copenhagen will probably be able to pull this off. And in terms of emission reductions, they calculate that the 75% of the emission reduction potential will probably come from increasing the share of renewables in the district heating. So it's not a surprise that the focus here is on energy and energy related initiatives. There is also a project called Energy Lab Nordhaven, which is essentially acting as a smart city, a smart energy a kind of research center, trying out new initiatives and technologies and disseminating lessons learned and also promoting new and innovative technologies. Now, of course, energy is not the only focus. They are also looking into other areas which are obviously important for a city, and they are working together with more than 250 companies on their smart city agenda. Now, here, the second local initiative is from Helsinki, which is known to be the happiest city in the world. And also after Stockholm, it is considered the second smartest city in the world. And instead of me talking about all the projects and initiatives that are ongoing, I thought I will show you a short video clip that introduces what it feels like living in smart Helsinki, and what are the possibilities given by new technologies and innovative policies that affects the everyday life. So I hope you will hear the sound. So moving on to the next initiative, it is from City of Umeå, which I already mentioned briefly with the bus stop. And Umeå is a university city, which means that its population is constantly increasing. So they are facing with the challenge of how to maintain or even reduce the energy consumption in the city while maintaining the population growth. And in 2017, they joined the Horizon 2020 project, partially financed by the European Commission. And they created a smart city concept, which incorporates quite a few innovative energy-related technologies. And I just listed here 3, which I thought were quite interesting. One of which is to connect the buildings with district heating and geothermal heating. Now, this is obviously very important in the Nordics, where we have long and rather cold winters. Also, by using solar panels, the energy generated by solar is stored underground using large-scale batteries. And also, the city provides cargo bikes for citizens to do their shopping, which is obviously an attempt to try to push citizens out from their passenger cars. And also, I thought that was a very interesting business model that the city is trying, which means that for those newly built projects, which can offer an alternative, a smart and green alternative to car transport, and they are allowed to build less parking lots than normally they would be mandated by local construction law. Moving on to smaller scale initiatives, I would like to introduce a couple of interesting projects and technologies, starting with a CityCap project from Lahti city. Lahti is a Finnish city approximately 50 kilometers north of Helsinki, with a population of 120,000 people, which is kind of making them an average European city. When they calculated, it turned out that 30% of their carbon emission is coming from transportation, and the citizens are quite heavily relying on their passenger cars. So the challenge was to create innovative and smart transportation means by providing long-term and solid, strong incentives, and perhaps more importantly, to change the mentality of the citizens about mobility and what is a sustainable mobility, and obviously trying to push them out from their cars. So as a solution, they implemented the very first, at least within the European Union, the very first city-scale personal carbon trading scheme, which basically means that the application would automatically detect the means of transportation taken by the individual, whether it's tram, train, bus, or walk or bicycle. And based on the distance traveled, the app automatically calculates the greenhouse gas emission associated with the trip. And the system rewards those people who choose smart and green alternatives by providing discount tickets for public transportation or free bicycle repair services. The project was a trial. It's already finished, and I think the overall reception was very good. However, of course, there were some lessons learned that were identified. For example, that the system can be cheated if someone turns off the GPS or just simply leaves the mobile phone home. Then, of course, there is no way for the system to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the travel. But all in all, it was a very well received project, and now they are working on an upgraded version of the system. Now, there is another interesting technology which I wanted to introduce to you. This is coming from the city of Gothenburg, which is also the home of the car manufacturer Volvo, which I believe most of you know. And here, and also in Stockholm, they have been testing out a new technology called geofencing. Geofencing is essentially is a virtual fence which allows the control of vehicles remotely, digitally, within a designated geographical area. So essentially, car speed can be reduced in certain areas. Cars can also be banned from certain areas. And it's also possible that once a car approaches a designated area, to change remotely, digitally, the cars into electric mode. So I also have a very short clip of this here. Again, apologies for that. And the last project I would like to introduce you is also from Finland. It's called Smart Kalasatama. This is a region, it's a district within the city of Helsinki, which is focusing on co-creation and co-innovation by municipalities, citizens, companies, and also university researchers. The reason why I wanted to introduce this to you is because I thought that the way they define the overall objective of the project was something brilliant. Very simple and very easily understandable for the average citizen. And the goal was to provide an extra hour of free time for all the citizens per day through the use of through resource optimization and the effective use of resources. So here they are trying to share public spaces with citizens and opening up underutilized public spaces as an example through their FlexiSpace project. And by using smart locks and online application, they can also control who has access and for what purposes to these public spaces, making them more vibrant and promoting collaboration and interaction among citizens. And finally, in terms of initiatives, I wanted to say a few words about Stockholm, which I mentioned earlier that it was chosen as the smartest city in the world the year 2000. And instead of describing or introducing some of the flagship projects, I thought it might be more interesting and relevant to show you how my everyday life is impacted by smart city related technologies. So actually over the weekend, I gathered my family around the dining table and we tried to go through and list up all the tools and apps and technologies that we use on a daily basis. And of course, probably I would have needed that for at least 2-3 slides, but I tried to compile here the most interesting ones and the most important ones perhaps. So in terms of mobility, when we use public transportation through the SL app, we actually buy a time slot, a 90-minute time slot, in which we can get on and use as many means of transportation as we want, obviously offered by SL, bus, tram, subway, and we can even get on boats within the city, traveling from one point to another. When we use a taxi, we use Bolt, which is the Estonian version. It's an Estonian unicorn company, the Nordic version of Uber. It's even a little bit cheaper. and it works very efficiently. When we park our own car, we pay for the parking through the Easy Park application, which is also very easy and very convenient, and we can also adjust the timing just with the push of a button. Moving on to the leisure, we live in Stockholm archipelago with thousands of islands with beautiful nature. So obviously during the summer, you feel like visiting these islands. But of course, owning and maintaining a boat is rather an expensive thing. So instead, we are using a boat sharing application and service called Skippery, with which we can take a small size motorboat for a day trip to one of the islands. In terms of safety, at work we use also smart locks to open and close the offices. Recently, when we wanted to go for an open house tour, we realized that due to COVID, these are now virtual tours. So all the real estate agencies are offering virtual tours instead of physical ones. Also, very important, my kids are wearing a smartwatch, which allows us parents to see where my kids are in the city. And also we get notification if they go outside of an area which we are designated as a kind of safe zone. In terms of education, most of the schools in Stockholm and possibly throughout the whole Sweden are registered on the Schoolsoft platform. This is a platform where we get messages, important notification from the school, and also where we report the absence of our kids. And this is not only important for the teachers, but based on the number of kids showing up on that day, they are going to order only as many portions of meals as many kids will be showing up, and this way they can reduce unnecessary food waste. Another interesting thing was that early on, already in kindergarten, my kids were given iPads, and they already started very simple and basic coding exercises, which are now obviously they're moving into a much more advanced high-level coding exercises in school. But that's brilliant to see. In terms of environment, when we go to the city center and when we take our own car, then we have to pay a congestion tax. This is with the kind of scan. The scan reads your number plate, and at the end of the month, you get a bill which you have to pay. Also, we collect the kitchen waste, the namagomi, in designated bags, which are used then to generate biogas, which fuels most of the regional and also the city buses in Stockholm. Also in the city center, there are smart trash bins called big bellies, and they have two very distinct functions. One is that it can compress the waste inside when it's getting full, and it shows also how full these bins are, and they dispatch waste collection only when the bin is full, so it reduces unnecessary travel by the waste collection service in the city. Now, perhaps finance is the area which is most heavily impacted by smart technologies. Through our personal identification number, which I understand that Japan is also introducing or has recently introduced, with the personal identification number and with our bank ID, and we can log in to the online portals of multiple service providers, utility companies, insurance, pretty much all the service providers that we use, and we see our contractual information. We can sign up for new services, we can decline or stop existing services. Naturally, we do all our banking on our bank's mobile app. We get invoices, electronic invoices, or occasionally when we get physical invoices with our banking app, we can scan within 5 seconds and pay the bill immediately. Sweden is very much a cashless society. Even the smallest vendors have these kind of card readers, so you don't need to pay by cash. As a matter of fact, since we are living in Sweden for the last 4 years, the only time I've seen and had to use a cash coin was actually when we were eating dinner with my family, and my son found in the kid corner an air hockey game, and that machine was still running on physical coins. So I actually had to buy coins with my credit card, but that's the only time I actually seen or used cash here in Sweden. We also have the Swish app, which is a kind of peer-to-peer payment system. By their phone numbers or a QR code provided by the other party, you can send cash or money between peers. And also just recently, 1.5 months ago, I declared my taxes through the tax application. It took me probably less than 2 minutes, and that's because I needed to change my mobile phone number. In terms of dining, we buy groceries through the Mathem app. We order warm meals through the Foodora app, for example. And when I'm in the city during lunchtime, I quite often check the Karma app, which is an app promoting reduction of food waste. So I see which restaurant or cafe in my vicinity offer discounted meals for those that the expiry date is approaching, but they are obviously safe to eat, and they are equally delicious. In terms of community, for example, when we had to change schools, we did the online application and the selection of schools through the City Hall website, and also the city maintains a Make a Suggestion app, which I also thought was quite interesting and pioneering, where you can actually take a picture of broken benches, full trash cans, or broken lights, whatever that bothers you, and with your geo coordinates, and by taking a picture, the city officials can repair or can make the necessary actions. Now, health is also a very important area, obviously, and here when there is no need to go to see a doctor physically, then we quite often have online consultation with the doctors using the CRE app. They can also prescribe medication, so there is no need to get a prescription physically. And when you go to a pharmacy, the system already recognizes that you have medicines to pick up, and by showing the ID, you can pretty much pick up your medicine immediately. Also, you have full access through different apps. You have full access to your medical history. You can see all the results back for several days. And also, there are a couple the same app which we use, for example, for booking appointments. Just last week, when I got my first COVID shot, I also booked an appointment through one of these apps. And in terms of business, you know, I'm working within an innovation context, so I'm using a couple of offices, co-sharing offices, and I'm also working with 5 universities which came to one umbrella, promoting and providing entrepreneurship related and innovation related education. And through these courses, students can collect credits, which they can actually use towards their graduation in their home universities. So I thought that was also quite interesting. And most recently, I came across Stockholm 2040 vision of smart cities, and I just took a couple of snapshots from the report, which I thought were interesting. Maximum 3-minute waiting time for public transport, more than 4,500 public roof gardens, 10% of the city energy to be generated by human-powered vehicles. But my personal favorite is these tiny fireflies, which you see in the middle of the slide, which acts essentially as tiny drones that can actually follow you and provide lighting at night. And they also provide communication and data and navigation services to you. I mean, obviously, this report is for thought-provoking reasons and to start dialogues, but I thought these were quite interesting. And by the way, by then probably we will have 7G, if not 8 or more. Now, coming towards the last part of my presentation, I would like to say a few words about NordicBiz, which I started last year with the mission of matching Nordic, Baltic, and also other European startup scale-up companies with Japanese corporate investors. NordicBiz is an Estonian company. We are using the Estonian e-residency program, which is brilliant. The company was registered online. We didn't have to visit Estonia even to open a bank account, but obviously most of the activities are organized from Stockholm. We have been seeing a very positive and increasing trends in terms of number of Japanese investments here in the Nordics. It's growing more or less year by year. I actually believe that the 2020 figure is more than just 15 investments. And if I have to name one Japanese brand that is very active, it's obviously, it is SoftBank, which only in Sweden and Norway has made 9 investments over the last couple of years at a relatively large investment volume. And just to give you 3 interesting examples of what kind of startups we have here in the Nordics, and especially those that are tackling smart city related challenges. The first one is a Finnish company called Mass Global, which is essentially bringing together all the means of transportation, city level transportation in one app. And as you can see, quite a few Japanese companies have decided recently to invest in their development. The next one is an equally interesting project from Reykjavik, from Iceland. What they do is they capture CO2, either from the atmosphere, but the source of CO2 could be anything else. And they mix the CO2 with water, essentially creating carbonated water or soda. And they pump it down into suitable rock beds, creating carbonated minerals, stones within a few months. And unlike other capture and storage technologies, here the formulation, the stone formulation is permanent. So there is no chance of accidental leak or release of CO2 back in the atmosphere. And last but not least, Upteku, they are actually a portfolio startup, and they are providing services for the maritime sector. And as far as we know, they are the only startup addressing this sector, providing support for docking for large cargo ships, and also support with search and rescue missions. And this is obviously important for cities which have docks and which are involved in shipping and trading. Here, just a very brief video of what they do and how it looks like. And finally, at the beginning of the presentation, I promised to say a few words about this initiative that we are working together with our strategic partner, HiQ Global. We have a vision of creating a global network of physical and virtual spaces, smart city spaces, which already exist independently, but there is no collaboration between the two of them, especially on a global scale. So obviously what we mean by physical space are local smart city initiatives which are providing testbed and demonstration opportunities for startups and new technologies. And the virtual spaces are spaces where startups and mature firms, large corporates can collaborate, co-innovate, create new technologies. But combining them and bringing them into one global network, this will essentially allow them, the startups at least, to scale their operations throughout the network and immediately get access to not only one location, but all the locations at the same time, which are part of the network. This project is still in an early phase. We are validating with the concept. We are validating the concept with important players that we would like to bring on board. So hopefully later on I can report to you about the progress of this initiative. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Peter, for excellent presentation. You know what? Each time I hear about the Nordic smart city stories, I'm kind of amazed. You guys are way ahead of our curve, actually, right? And I would like to ask you some questions and then move on to the comments and questions coming into the chat box. And for those who are writing in the chat box, please select the all presenters and participants so that we can share all the writings together, okay? That's the one mandate this program actually have to share, right? So one thing I found impressive is that the 9 criteria, I think it was 9 criteria of the smart cities in Nordic countries. You started up with the inclusiveness and then go down to healthy, resilient, compact and green, mobile, low carbon, circularity, design, then finally smart. If we ask the same question to the Japanese smart city practitioners or regulators, maybe the smart digital technology, data, mobile, online something, those will come first. Maybe convenience or efficiency, those may also come. And at the end of that long list, probably we'll remember, oh, okay, inclusiveness, digital inclusion is important. Low carbon, it's a new one. Okay, under the Suga administration, we are committed to reduce the carbon emission. Circularity, or sounds like things coming from the Amsterdam or other European countries or cities. So the criteria seems to be very different. That's, I think, is the most visible difference. How did you come up with those 9 criteria in such an order? Is that a new one, or you have been already working this for a decade or so forth?
I think here the order is not so important. So there is no hierarchy represented with the order I presented. This is actually coming from Nordic Innovation, which is an intergovernmental organization among the 5 Nordic countries, which is tackling sustainability and innovation related aspects. And I fully agree with you. I think if you look at different regions and countries in the world, all of them are struggling and with different challenges. Now, obviously, when you have Japan with high density in population, we don't really have that kind of issue in the Nordics. I think like Stockholm, the larger Stockholm has only 2 million people, and this is the largest city in the Nordics. So density is not very much an issue. However, for example, you mentioned inclusivity. The Nordics being a welfare society, of course, it is a primary target for immigrants. So here we are facing with the challenge of how to integrate people with different ethnicity into the society and providing them long-term opportunities, living opportunities, and also work-related opportunities. So, I think every country and region has its own priority, but I think these 9 criteria represents really well what the Nordic thinks about sustainability. And you know, like this is a region which has been traditionally very close to the environment. And just also to mention the case of Sweden, you know, it is a country which hasn't had wars for more than 100 years, if not 200. So, you know, the lack of or not having interruption from a war where you have to rebuild infrastructure and the whole society, you can have long-term perspectives, and you can actually have a peace of mind and think about what are the values in your life that you want to promote, and you want to make sure that it comes across in every aspect of the society. So I think all those factors contributed a lot to come up with these kind of sustainability criteria.
I see. Okay, thank you very much. And the second question, then I'll move on to the chat box. The Nordic countries are also known as the well-being top of the world, right? I think the Finland have been top of the UN happiness report for I don't know, 4 times straight.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then Denmark and other Nordic countries follow. And Japan this year was 56. Last year was 62. And for the past decade or so forth, the Japan has been following a downward trend, actually. You know, even if you eliminate cultural factors affecting the ranking, right? The downward trend is something irritates us, actually. And you know, we as Japanese didn't expect that ranking is that low, actually. Even though the ranking is measured by non-Japanese measurement system. So how do you see yourselves? Are you happy, first of all? Do you feel you are living in a well-being country, and why?
I actually do. I actually do, because there are lots of opportunities that are presented to us which would not be available in other countries. Just to say a couple of examples, and of course, forgive me to bring up always innovation related examples, but you know, this is the broader context that I work in. If you look at, for example, the Swedish welfare system, by law, companies would have to let their employees go for 6 months to 1 year if they decide to start their own companies or start whatever business related endeavors. And then the company, if the person decides, the citizen decides to come back to his or her employment, the companies have to take the person back. So you know, like these are all things which really give a peace of mind for citizens that they can do to some extent what they want. And also work-life balance is very much promoted. You know, like your boss will probably look at you with strange eyes if he sees you spending too much time in your office, which is probably quite the contrary what you experience in Japan. So I think, you know, like these values, family, also freedom of act. I think these are all values which are also demanded by the citizens. It's not just an opportunity, but there is a strong demand, and the citizens are quite keen on utilizing all these opportunities. And you know, like you can say, well, of course, I should have access to all these opportunities and services because I pay a lot of tax. So you know, that's something what you have to give. But I think people are generally quite happy with that, and I don't hear people complaining about high tax rates, because they know that in exchange they get really amazing and very user-friendly services. For example, if I think about the health services, I mean, it's brilliant. It's quick, efficient, and of course it's very low price. I mean, every time you visit the doctor, you have to pay a very small fee up to a certain level, above which it's free for you. So you get a lot, and in exchange you also need to give. But this is pretty much in balance, making it quite a pleasant region to live. And if you ask me personally, my only concern, actually this is more of a concern for my wife, is pretty much the long dark hours during the winter time. But this is something which we cannot change. No smart technology, well, so far has managed to address that issue. But if you can live with that, I think it's definitely a place where you, for example, also want to raise your kids. Very child friendly. Parents have long kind of how do you call it? Not vacation, but time you can take off from work. Also the dads are allowed to equal the same amount of time. In fact, if the dads don't take up the time which is allotted to them, they actually get some penalty for that. So like these are the tiny initiatives that all promote this kind of well-being society, and all in all, it feels good to live in the Nordics.
Thank you very much. I think Japan has to change the course of the system a little bit. When I was younger, I competed with my peers. How much longer I work a day? How many times energy drinks I took a day? Crazy. All right, thank you very much. And in the interest of time, let's look at the chat box, right? And first of all, message from Nana-san. Probably you worked at UNCRD. Long time no see. I'm glad to see you today. It's a happy message. Peter.
Thank you.
Right. And the second one is Manchu-san. How do you involve people, such as participation of them, to utilize their ideas? How much portion of citizens participates the activities related to smart cities related to their own issues? In Japan, the portion of people who are interested to climate change or sustainability might be still low. As a person who have experience learning in Japan, I'd like to hear your opinion on how to involve much more Japanese people for thinking about social issues. Tough question.
Yeah, tough question, but I would say very important one. And if you recall, on one of my slides, I also mentioned about the project, which was especially about finding ways how to involve people in the co-creation of smart cities, how to invite at least their feedback, starting with that, how to invite people to share their feedback, share their desire with municipalities, city officials, or also all the other stakeholders, companies, researchers, university researchers working in that field. I also think that the academia has a very, very important part in this, and research should definitely be one of the driving factors. But the average citizen, it's hard to quantify how much time they invest in this, but also the app which I mentioned, share, make a suggestion app. I mean, these are all kind of tools that encourage co-creation. If you already say that you don't like something because it's broken, or it looks ugly, or you see, for example, a graffiti that bothers you and you think it doesn't belong there, it should be taken off. Now those are the tiny comments and opinions that you can share with those who are working much closely with smart city related initiatives. So I think that this is exactly the overall challenge, how to involve people, because essentially it's us who will transform cities into becoming more smart. And I would say to some extent you have to have this personal desire of making life better and making your community a better place to live and work. But yes, I think this is probably the ultimate question that every city wants to have the answer for. In some ways, this is working already quite successfully. Some cities are struggling. I think also the right incentive system needs to be in place in order to engage citizens, and this is also what I showed you with the City Cap project. By providing sustainable and useful incentives, you can probably attract some of the people to take part. But I think this is the biggest challenge that smart cities and cities in general have to tackle.
Maybe repeating the same question again, but how do you Nordic people in general feel about serving or working on the social issues? Is that a right? Is that an obligation? Is that a pleasure? Is that a burden? What's the typical answer if you ask a question?
I would say it's a mix. I think it cannot be really separated in our daily life, and again, to some extent, these kind of desires have to come from within yourself. But I would say it's a healthy balance of all those factors.
I see. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next question, one coming from Kudo-san. Thank you for your great presentation. I really would like to visit Nordic countries when the situation gets better in Japan. What do you think are the common factors among top 5 countries for happiness index that you presented? What do we lack in Japan?
I would say the quality of life is certainly something that sticks out, and the quality of life, in my understanding, can be measured by multiple ways. I would say that also the time spent on commuting also contributes to quality of life. If I have to commute 20 minutes one way, that's 40 minutes a day. That's completely different what you would experience, for example, in Tokyo, right? Where on average 1 hour commute one way is pretty normal or acceptable. Some people actually do like 2 hours. Actually, while I was working at UNCRD in Nagoya, I was commuting on a daily basis from Osaka to Nagoya using the Shinkansen. I even had a pass with student discount. But from door to door, one way was almost 2 hours. So I spent 4 hours, and this obviously contributed to some extent how I felt about the quality of my life. Now, of course, that period of time was fantastic in my life. I learned so much, and I enjoyed working with the UN. But if I had to be doing that on a daily basis now, I would feel like terrible. But also availability of useful services in my daily life, or the welfare society, how much time I can spend with my newborn child, also what kind of health services I'm getting from providers. Do I have to go there physically, or I can have a consultation with the doctor online? These are all, and I would say convenience. Convenience is also very, very, very important factor. And in some ways, I think Japan is winning, and you cannot beat Japan. For example, I'm thinking about the convenience stores. That's something brilliant. You have convenience stores, perhaps even multiple ones, every corner. Now this we don't have in the Nordics. Perhaps we don't even need that, but I think also convenience. I would emphasize convenience. It's a difficult question because it's complex. It has multiple elements, but probably these are some of the things I would highlight.
Yeah, thank you. The example of the Karasatama you mentioned, there are claims that I am giving you 1 hour for your free time, right? That's an important message, actually, I guess. For those commuting in Japan, spending 2 hours, 3 hours on the train, right?
Exactly. And I think, time is our most valuable resource at the end of the day. There is a saying, you can buy pretty much everything for money, but there's one thing which you cannot buy, which is, well, in some ways you can, but time is limited. So exactly, and that's what I really liked about the project. It's so down to earth, so simple, but so understandable, and everybody feels like, okay, this is the objective that we need to work for. And I think also when cities come up with their own goals, I think this is the most important. How do you convey the message? What are the initiatives? What are the things that we are working towards? And by giving them meaningful objectives, this is also one way to involve them. Just to reflect on the previous question, how to involve citizens, by giving them tangible objectives which they can work on and which they feel the results on their own skin and in their own lives.
Yeah, I was reading the article on the World Economic Forum website or something. Was about the mayor of Stockholm saying cities should have a purpose.
Exactly.
And the purpose for well-being and empower citizens to become well-being. And if you provide that in such kind of environment, then automatically, the well-being oriented people and the companies all gather to the city, and there is a positive cycle.
Yes, exactly. But you see, the thing with these interviews, and by far this is not a criticism to the city of to the mayor of Stockholm City, but of course every city official would have something similar slogan. But what's important is that really, how do you transform that and translate that into actions? How do you involve citizens? Are you giving meaningful, tangible goals? Which the citizens can relate to, and I think this is something brilliant what we see in the Nordics, because we are really encouraged and you feel like contributing and making the cities a better place for yourself and also for your surroundings.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question. Juliana Hess, thank you. Excellent presentation and so much to learn. 2 questions. Could you talk about the role of the private sector in designing, implementing, and ensuring citizen compliance of the many initiatives? Is there a pushback? There are government incentives to get companies on board. Does the private sector invest heavily, or is the investment coming from the government? And number 2, can you talk about impact measuring and management of the various initiatives? Is this something that is actively pursued? The 2 questions.
Okay, so the first one, the private sector involvement. Most of the projects that I brought to you today and I introduced you were a mixture of municipality involvement and private sector involvement. I think it's almost impossible to do it without the involvement of companies, technology providers, and because essentially they are the ones who have the practical solutions. And like for example, Sweden, which is home of large industrial companies, but also tiny agile startups with brilliant ideas. Now, of course, this is also their best interest to use these initiatives as their testbed. In fact, if I look at startups, one reason why startups in the Nordics are so successful is because they are using the local environment and the national market, which is tiny. Like in case of Sweden, we are talking about only 10 million people, but it's perfect for a testbed. Perfect to see how users react when they start using certain technologies, but then they need to expand immediately abroad. Like they are born global. That's what we like to say here. So the private sector involvement is absolutely crucial. It's also financially beneficial for them. And of course, to some extent, money is coming from the national government, also to some extent from R&D funds from the European Union. But I think this is a win-win situation, and it has to be win-win situation in order to make it sustainable. The second question was, I think, about monitoring.
Measuring,
measuring and monitoring. Now, I think this is also very crucial, and it's important that the projects are designed from scratch in a way that that the achievements are measurable. But with more and more technologies, smart technologies, I think measurement, at least the technological measurement is definitely doable and feasible. And once the project is complete, I think it's a common practice that you try to assess the projects with common evaluation criteria. You organize after action reviews. You gather multi-stakeholders to give their opinion and identify improvement points. I think probably there is no general solution to that, but again, I think already the project should be designed in a way that measurement, observation and measurement and evaluation can be done retroactively. So sorry, it's a vague answer, but I'm not familiar with any kind of amazing best practice which would be focusing on, or which would be famous for having a successful kind of evaluation process at the end. But I would say, generally speaking, most of these projects have this kind of inherent function to do so at the end.
Okay, thank you. Move on to the next question from the Naoki Motohashi. Thank you for such impressive presentation. It is interesting. Convenience was not mentioned in your talk, which is a kind of essential words in smart city discussion in Japan. What have made the notion of smart cities more inclusive and much wider? That probably the 9 criteria I mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah. Just to reflect on the first part of the question, convenience, I think this is what I try to demonstrate with all the technological tools that we are using on a daily basis, making our life convenient. So, from an average citizen perspective, I think this is what mostly smart cities about: how to make your life more convenient, more simple, while sharing and maintaining those values which were given, which were introduced earlier. Inclusiveness. Could you please repeat what was the question about inclusiveness?
So what made the inclusive as a notion included in the smart city criteria, and how did you make it wider? I mean, the list of the criteria.
Yeah, so as I said, inclusiveness is definitely an issue, first of all, to make an average citizen interested and engaged, but also, as I also mentioned, immigration. I mean, Sweden, for example, and also Norway and Finland and Denmark, they are facing with a high influx of immigrants, and that is definitely posing an increasing burden on the countries. Not necessarily from a financial point of view, although that is also a big issue, but really how to create a symbiosis between countries who share different background, different religion, different customs, different values. I think it is an ongoing challenge. All of the countries that I mentioned are tackling this in one way or another. There are no ultimate solutions that I could report, or which I'm at least aware of. So that is definitely a great challenge.
Thank you. The next question, Koshitomo-san. In order to live a smart life, we need to use smart technology through a variety of applications and devices. I wonder if all people, including the elderly, are able to adapt to such things. Or how is the smart technology made to be adaptable for all people? Would you give us some examples?
I think especially in the case of elderly people and the elderly generation, I think convenience is even more important than among the younger generation. So I think if something is convenient, it also means that it is relatively easy to use. It is user friendly. And if that is the case, I think it's more or less a matter of disseminating information to elderly people that will bring in and pull them into using new technologies. And also, you know, if these technologies impacting their everyday life, one way or another, they really get involved and get on board. But again, it's important that it has to be convenient and easy to use. And I think you know, these are pretty much criteria for all kinds of technologies. You know, like if you are a new startup coming up with a technology, these are the core functions you need to incorporate into your solution, and that will also make the life of elderly people easier. In terms of initiatives, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. For example, I can also tell you that you know, the elderly generation, at least here in the Nordics, are very active physically. Actually, that is very much the same as in Japan. And you know, it's very refreshing to see that even you know, people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, just like me, you know, we reserve, for example, tennis courts in the club where I play tennis through an application. We reserve not only the time slot, but also if you want to have a coach working with you, you also book the coach, and you also book the fee and pay the fee on the application. So, you know, I mean there is no easier way of doing that. And elderly people are very much supportive, and they like these kind of convenient solutions. But of course, as I mentioned, I think it's the matter of conveying information to them. But selling the idea, selling the technology is, at least here in the Nordics, I don't think it's a big issue.
Okay, thank you. The next question from Kawahara-san. Do countries of Nordic nation collaborate or compete in the making of the smart cities?
I would like to say that hopefully there is a healthy competition among the cities. So the only regional initiative which I'm aware of is the Nordic Smart City Network. The countries and the cities within those countries do collaborate actively. So I don't know if you remember the 5 flagship projects that I mentioned on the slide of the Nordic Smart City Network. Those projects were initiated by 1 or maximum 2 cities, but all the other cities from the network, meaning all the remaining 20 cities, could freely join them as collaborator or as an observer. But their active involvement was also encouraged. But having said that, I think, you know, a healthy amount of competition is always useful and helpful. But I would say there is much more collaboration than competition among the countries.
Okay, thank you. And in the interest of time, I cannot cover all the questions, but I will pick the relevant questions at the end. So Ogawa-san, thank you for introducing overall picture of smart city development in Nordic countries. There's 3 questions. I don't know if we can cover all, but 1, who are the promoting body of urban developments and what is their funds? City municipal government funded by taxes, or proposal of private sectors supported by financial incentives from governmental agencies, or else?
So here I would like to highlight and again, since I live in Sweden, I'm most familiar with the Swedish context. I would like to highlight the importance of the innovation agency called Vinnova here in Sweden, which is the most important donor organization for innovation and R&D. So actually for my research, the PhD course, I'm analyzing all the funded projects since I think 2006 or 2009, which is approximately 18,000 projects. I'm looking at those which were not a success. So my theme of my PhD is innovation failure and how to turn failure into success. So I'm looking at projects financed by Vinnova which were prematurely terminated, but still they created some sort of a value. So sorry, that was just a side note. So there are government agencies which are heavily subsidizing programs and developments. Of course, the private sector is also heavily involved, and I would say, especially from now on with the European Union's Green Deal, more and more funds will be also available for these kind of developments from the European Union, from the Commission. So I think again the answer is a mixture of all these stakeholder contribution.
Thank you. And the last question. It's kind of interesting question as it relates to Japanese situation as well. Are there any privacy-oriented arguments to make the smart city movement in the Nordic countries? In Japan, there is a serious problem, so that we have to make a countermeasure first. The protection of the privacy in the use of data, actually.
Yes,
data sovereignty,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely, it's a very crucial question, and it's also a controversial subject, I would say, also here in the Nordics. You know, like if you Google my name on a Swedish website, you will see my address. You will see, you know, like quite a lot of information about myself. And you know, like moving into Sweden, I was honestly speaking, I was quite shocked. But then once you understand that, you know, this is also an open society, and of course data could be used in a wrong manner, but also this data enables agencies, governments to make better predictions, also to come up with new services, and also there are quite a lot of startups which are coming also from the region to Sweden because of the open data policy that we have here. Having access to data is also providing a very useful testbed for companies. And of course, naturally, all these solutions have to have very strict personal data handling mechanisms in place. But you know, generally speaking, the EU is also quite front runner on privacy, data privacy, personal data protection issues. So there is some regulation coming from the EU, which all the EU countries have to follow, but also national legislation needs to follow up as well. But I would say that the Nordics is especially famous for having quite a lot of data available on each and every citizen. Now, of course, as an individual, you can limit that. There are ways that you can block all your information from these publicly available systems and databases. But you have to go the extra mile in order to ensure that if this is something what you want. But of course, it is a very important and very difficult question. It is being tackled from multiple parties, and you know, Japan, I think is much more conservative, as you said, which has its advantages and also disadvantages. The legislation needs to be placed in order to, by any means, in order to protect the wrongdoings with data. That's clear. It has to be done.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we are now wrapping up in the interest of time. So for those who put the comments on that, my apologies, I could not cover all of them in the interest of time. But Peter, thank you very much for your presentation and answering the questions in detail. And,
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And I hope this is going to be just the first of our series of webinar. And I hope you will be back in a few months and so forth. Again, thank you very much for the excellent presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the next round. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kudo-san, your turn.
Yeah, thank you, Peter, for your great presentation, and thank you for all the viewers who stayed. I just go quickly with our webinar introduction. Just a minute. I go like this now. So first of all, you will receive questionnaires after this event. So we would appreciate, since this is our first webinar, if you could answer the questionnaires. And also stay tuned with our programs of the upcoming webinars, Smart City Institute Japan's Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And also we post our programs on website and PTX. And the upcoming programs, this Friday, we have a second English-only webinar, and the theme is Barcelona. And also we are going to, we are going to invite guests from, city of Barcelona, Mr. Josep Bohigas, and he will talk about Decidim as well. And also June 23rd, Wednesday, we are going to have a third webinar, and this will be presented by British Embassy Tokyo, as well as gentleman from Telensa. This is the world-leading British smart lighting solution provider. And also in July, early July, we are going to have a smart city as engines of growth and prosperity. And we will invite a guest from Connected Places Catapult in London. And please stay tuned as we have more to come. And this is our Smart City Institute Japan. For those who viewed for the first time, we are the kind of one of the largest smart city platform in Japan, and we have membership over 400 now. And we have supporting members over 320 entities, including 6 ministries and 190 local governments in Japan. And also we have universities as well as the entities from overseas as well. And if you want to join the membership, if you have not done so yet, if you are the supporting member like central government agencies and local governments, universities, research institutions, nonprofit organizations, membership fee is free of charge. So please contact us and we will send you the information. Okay, so thank you very much for staying with us, and please have a nice day. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.